Good morning, and we'll call to order the meeting of the RTC.
Good morning.
Dr. Fred?
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. Item 1 is your first citizens' participation.
It's the first time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board on a posted agenda item, now is your opportunity. Seeing and hearing no one, we'll close this portion of public comment.
Item 2 is to approve the agenda. Mr. Chairman, the agenda is in order for your approval.
Move approval, Mr. Chair.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Item 3 is to receive the general manager's report. Tina Quigley, our general manager, is not here today. She is testifying before Congress on transportation and emerging technology. So, unfortunately for you all, you have me. We have several recognitions today. Today we'll start with our first item on the GM report. It's a recognition of Ms. Rhonda McRae with MV Transportation. Is she here? Come on down. For more than 6 years, Ms. Rhonda McRae has been an exceptional operator with a 98% on-time performance. Earlier this month, Ms. McRae went above and beyond to help a visually impaired customer who was close to missing their next bus. She guided the customer across the street and called the bus operations center to ensure the next bus would not miss picking up the passenger. Thank you, Ms. McRae, for going above and beyond for most of our vulnerable customers.
Whew. I am really at awe with this, and this is really an honor. I appreciate this so much. I love what I do. I'd like to thank my management team, my daughter LaRonda, and my best friend Margaret. I have an awesome support team, and this is a shock to me, especially since it's something I do every day and something that I love to do. I just want to thank you guys very much.
Next, we would like to recognize an operator from Keolis, Ms. Veronica Adwell. Is she here? Ms. Veronica Adwell has been an operator for nearly 2 years and was driving the Boulder Highway Express route when she noticed a young boy who was wearing the same clothing as the night before. She talked to the 8-year-old boy who claimed that he had run away from home. She then called in to dispatch, and Metro was able to meet the bus. Metro subsequently informed us that the child had been reported missing for more than 2 weeks. Ms. Adwell's actions saved a young boy from potential harm, and we're grateful for her awareness and swift actions. Please join me in recognizing Ms. Veronica Adwell.
Thank you. This is incredible to me. This is such an honor. Much like with the other lady, I love my job. I love coming to work every single day. I feel like I just did what I would hope anybody else would do if they saw my child out there like that. But this is a great honor. I appreciate it. Thank you guys so much.
Next up is a special recognition from the RTC. Each quarter, the RTC selects a contractor who has gone above and beyond in representing the agency. And today, we recognize Officer William Paul with Allied Universal. Since 2014, Allied Security Officer William Paul has been assigned to the RTC's account, where he currently serves as a day shift supervisor. While performing duties at the South Strip Transfer Terminal, Officer Paul observed a person get into a confrontation with Metro. When the situation began to escalate, Officer Paul acted quickly by moving the other transit riders back to a safe location and assisted Metro with gaining physical control of the person and situation. We'd like to recognize Officer Paul's quick response that day and his professionalism every day. Thank you for keeping our customers safe, Officer Paul.
I just gonna say thank you, everyone. It's nice to know that you guys appreciate what we do out there. It's not just myself, but for everybody who's doing this job. Thank you.
Thank you.
Next, I'd like to report on the I-11 grand opening event. On August 9th, the RTC, along with NDOT, celebrated the long-awaited grand opening of I-11 in Boulder City. The new interstate, which broke ground in 2015, is one of the most important transportation projects, not only for our region, but also nationally. I-11 is taking the first step to bridge Las Vegas and Phoenix, the only two remaining metro areas with populations of more than 1 million without an interstate linking them. The I-11 grand opening marked a historic moment for our region. None of this could have happened without the thousands of workers, elected officials, and community leaders who helped make this project a priority. Here's a quick video recapping the grand opening event.
We did it!
Great. This concludes the General Manager's report.
Comments or questions for Dr. Fred, Commissioner? We can't let him off the spot.
I know.
We got him here.
That was an awesome opening. I've never really been to one like that other than the bridge when it, how many years back. So I want to just thank the staff for what you put together. I also think it's time to publicly note that unfortunately we had a couple of accidents right after the opening, but it had nothing to do with the design. And I think that's important to maybe put that on the record. Do you mind doing something like that?
Sure. There were a couple of accidents, nothing to do with the project itself. One was attributed to a drunk driver. The other one was somebody who just decided to do a U-turn. We don't know the cause of that, but nothing to do with the design. And we've been addressing this with the media, and we'll continue to monitor the facility in case we need to do something else. All right. Item 4 is to receive NDOT's Director's Report. Mr. Rudy Malfabon has this item.
Thank you, Fred.
Wanted to mention related to the I-11, a great event, and I was really pleased to participate in that and attend. But we are working with the RTC and with Boulder City on some revisions to the signage there. We've received comments, and you probably have too, about people not being aware. It's a brand new highway, so they're not familiar with it, but it will improve some of the signage for if you're leaving Vegas and going to Kingman, a larger sign there that denotes Kingman, but also for Boulder City. Historic Boulder City will be denoted on there, and the access to the dam for the visitor center down there. So we'll make those signing improvements with RTC, and hopefully people will have clearer direction on some of the exits. But as was mentioned, definitely what I heard from NHP was that those were driver error incidents and could have been avoided had people made better driving decisions. They're very unfortunate, and serious fatalities resulted from that. Unfortunate. We had some flood damage recently with the monsoon season down here, and we're doing some emergency contracts to do those repairs. A couple of roads at Mount Charleston. I talked to Mary Martini, our district engineer, and she's working on something that will help the residents that live off of Deer Creek Road to get access while the construction is going on, because that road had some repairs, and also Lee Canyon Road, as well as Nipton. The road to Nipton from Searchlight is over a $3.5 million project that's underway there. So we'll get those roads open as soon as possible. We had a project advertising for ADA improvements on Nellis Boulevard, and we also had an information meeting last night for the public on the Tropicana ADA project. When we do these projects, we know that there's going to be a lot of impacts to the businesses with their driveways being reconstructed. So we want to get the word out on Tropicana, and then do the same kind of work with the business owners on Nellis when that project gets underway as well. We have some other studies that are out for hiring consultants for RFPs. Sahara to Flamingo feasibility study. I know that we're just wrapping up Neon by the middle of next year, but we want to look at the gap between Neon and the areas of I-15 that have already been widened. So that area, Sahara to Flamingo, will look at what we could do in the future, but also help us to discuss with the city that Mike Jansen has a concept for Martin Luther King. So we want to be well informed about how that impacts the freeway. Good news on the Beltway transfer agreement. It's should be before the Clark County Board of Commissioners in early October at one of the commission meetings. That has been worked out, and it transfers some of our local arterials that are state highways for the portions of the Beltway on the south side of the Beltway. It's pretty much wrapped up as far as the legal negotiations on the agreement, but we will take over maintenance, and the county will take over maintenance of the respective roadways that we're transferring, and we give ourselves about a year and a half to get all the legal descriptions and do the physical transfer. The other thing, the good news is that we received, every year the Federal Highway Administration redistributes the what's called obligation authority, basically your spending authority for your federal funds in that fiscal year. And at the tail end of the federal fiscal year, they always reallocate what's left over, what hasn't been released previously, and what's not been used by other states. And we received $32 million approximately of that spending authority, which means that we don't have to use kind of next year's money, which we do sometimes. That's kind of the way that RTC did the I-11, is to obligate your future years of federal funding. And the idea is that now if we receive that money or that spending authority, we don't have to advance next year's federal money towards some of the projects that we're completing or delivering this year. So good news overall for that $32 million. And it just means that more reimbursement from the feds occurs quicker, and that we can use that money in the future when we get reimbursed, when it goes in the highway fund. So that's the director's update for this month, and I think that the FRI update is a separate presentation item.
Comments or questions? Thank you, Rudy.
All right, items 5 through 47 are your consent agenda items and may be acted upon in one motion.
Motion on the floor. All those in favor signify by saying aye. Opposed? Motion carries.
Now we move to the non-consent part of your agenda. Item 48 is to receive an update on the Boulder Highway Multimodal Corridor Study. Mr. Craig Rebon, RTC's Planning Director, and a representative from our consultant team will provide the update.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. So Boulder Highway Corridor is a key part of the regional transportation network. It touches or feeds or serves the city of Las Vegas, Clark County, and the city of Henderson. But over time, the use and characteristics of the corridor have changed. And so to address those, the challenges and opportunities that those changing uses have brought, the RTC partnered with Nevada Department of Transportation to initiate a multimodal corridor study last year. And so to provide an update on that project, I'm going to now turn this over to Harshal Desai from Atkins and Jacob Snow from the J.A. Barrett Company.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman and members of the board. I'm Harshal Desai with Atkins. So Atkins was selected on this project last year. This is a 14-mile corridor. The purpose or the goal was we were given is reimagining this corridor into a local hybrid corridor for urban transport, right? So when built in 1931, the purpose of this corridor was long distance travel. It was pretty wide and with high speeds. Over the years, the purpose of this corridor has changed quite a bit. Today what we see out there, especially since the construction of I-515, what we see out there is majority of the trips that occurs out there are less than 2 miles. And one of the things to note there is it's generally used today for first mile, last mile transportation. And so in addition to that, this also houses the Boulder Highway Express, the BRT, and there are more than 10,000 trips that gets generated on that. In addition to that, there's 11 transit crossings, which generate many multiple transit transfers. So the combination of all this has resulted in significant pedestrian movements. And when you combine the pedestrian movements with the high speeds, the long crossing distances, it creates a big pedestrian safety issue. In fact, more than 10% of all the pedestrian fatalities in Nevada, they occur on this particular corridor on Boulder Highway. So when we started this project, our goals were how can we provide or improve the safety and provide reliable movement for all modes of transportation, that is pedestrian, bikes, and the vehicles. In addition to that, we wanted to make sure that while we do that, we are promoting the economic development along that corridor and improving the quality of life along that corridor. Also, we wanted to maintain the transit culture on that corridor that exists today. So where are we? So what have we done so far? So first, we have identified this problem. We met with all the stakeholders and the community, and we developed the vision. All the goals that you saw on the previous slides were not generated in vacuum. They were generated in working with the community and the stakeholders. And Jacob Snow is going to talk about that in a minute. Once we had a vision, we created this decision criteria that drive the alternative development. We created these alternatives, analyzed them, and then once they were analyzed, we are at the stage that now we are ready to select the alternatives. Overall, like I said, it's a 14-mile corridor, and we acknowledge that one size doesn't fit all. So to do that, what we did was we divided this corridor into 6 separate segments. We are calling them character areas. What we wanted to do was we wanted to dive into each segment and come up with a solution that fits the character of each segment. But overall, we also wanted to develop a concept that is flexible enough that can accommodate all the needs. So what we did is we have come up with this segment. We have a pedestrian realm that's going to be used for the pedestrians, also for the bikes, and for slow-moving traffic. Whereas through the through realm, we have a corridor that can accommodate any high-capacity transit, which could be either BRT, light rail, or a streetcar, along with fast-moving vehicles. In future, it's going to be quite cool. This is how it's going to look. What you see out here is two-way bike lanes. We have reduced the pedestrian crossing distances, so enhancing the safety. And also, we have accommodated open space that can be used for parks, linear parks. That was something that the community also would like to see. Like I said earlier, none of this was possible without extensive stakeholder and community engagement. And so I would like Jacob Snow to talk about our efforts on that aspect.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. For the record, Jacob Snow with the J. Barrett Company. We're a subconsultant to Atkins on this project. What you're seeing in front of you, you can see in the background there, that's the RTC's community engagement bus, or maybe better known as the onboard bus. I think most of you have actually been on board that vehicle. It's a converted 40-foot transit bus that inside has a kids' play area, and it's got the iPads where people can come on and take a survey. The RTC utilized that bus very effectively up and down this corridor for dozens of events, community engagements events at senior centers, community centers, recreation centers, employment fairs, at actual bus stops. And we got actual boots on the ground out with people who live and work in this corridor. We obtained more than 1,700 surveys from people who weighed in on what they thought Boulder Highway should look like and what the priorities for the design should be. In addition to that, we had one-on-one stakeholder interviews with key stakeholders up and down the corridor, from business groups, developers, from community organizations, and from all the major utility stakeholders in the area, as well as a lot of the general business people that have major employment destinations in the corridor. And these are the themes that we saw come out of those surveys and from the stakeholder interviews. There was general agreement that we need to improve pedestrian safety and lighting in the corridor. Not just overall lighting, but specific lighting for pedestrians and a different type of lighting for users on the roadway. There are two different types, and they need to be integrated together well to improve safety. And one of the things that we heard loud and clear from people was that they were just thrilled that you were paying attention to this corridor. And they're really glad that people are trying to do something about this problem, and they wanted to express their gratitude for you in that regard. One of the things we heard loud and clear from the business stakeholders in the community was that they wanted you and they wanted us to maintain automobile access to their businesses. They wanted to still have 3 lanes of travel out there on each side of the road. And with the concept that Harshal just presented to you, they have that. And I would argue with the frontage road concept, they have even improved access to their businesses, albeit on the frontage road, the automobile speed limits will be lower and much calmer, and it will result in a much greater safety environment in the corridor. Everyone that we talked to, pretty much everyone universally preferred the center running transit with the transit lanes in the median, like you saw. And everyone thought that this really looks wonderful, the concept. And with the center running transit, the landscaping, the boulevard look and feel to the corridor, people really liked that. And they were very, very outspoken about how much they liked that. There are lots of questions about when's this going to start and when's it going to get done. And I will couple that kind of in conclusion here with there was some skepticism from, not everyone, but from some of the stakeholders out there saying, we don't think you can do this. It's a very grand plan. And I don't think they were coming at it from the standpoint of being mean or oppositional. I think my sense of it is that many of the people that live and work in this corridor, they're not accustomed to having nice things. And what you have in this plan are some very, very nice things. And when I encountered that skepticism, I couldn't help myself, but I had to respond to it. And I said, well, if you like the center running transit with the the colored concrete in the transit lanes, if you like the nice landscaping in the raised medians, if you like the narrowed traffic lanes that calm the traffic and improve the safety, if you like the wider sidewalks for the pedestrians and you like the better bicycling environment, just go down to Grand Central Parkway. If you think that the RTC can't do this, they've done it in Grand Central Parkway and in Casino Center in downtown Las Vegas. They've done it before. And as Dr. Fred will tell you, it took some time to get that project done. And it took everybody cooperating together to get that project done. And it took us cobbling together a number of different funding sources to come up with the money to get that project done. But you know how to do this, and you can do this. And I've told them that you will do it. But for this great thing to happen for Boulder Highway, we're going to need to do the same thing again. Everybody's going to have to cooperate. NDOT, RTC, Clark County, City of Las Vegas, City of Henderson are all going to need to come to the table. Everybody's going to need to identify how they can contribute to get the project done. But there are lots and lots of examples of this board working in great cooperation with state and local governments to do just that. You've done it before, you'll do this one, and you'll do other projects like it in the future. But the good news is, at this point in the study, and Sean Higgins is here with Golden Gaming. He's one of the people that we met with because they now own Arizona Charlie's East on Boulder Highway. He made sure that his key staff was involved in all of the technical advisory committee meetings that we had throughout the year, and many of the stakeholders did just the same. And with that type of partnership and approach, we've been able to enjoy general support. I would say universal support generally for this concept as it goes forward. That's the good news, is that the people that work and invest and live in this corridor right now are really excited and very supportive of this concept going forward to the next phase.
Thank you, Jacob and Marshall. So I'm just going to quickly cover what the steps are to completion. So what you see in front of you are the next steps that will bring this planning study to its successful completion. We'll finish the stakeholder interviews that Jacob has been conducting. Then we'll work on, pardon me there. Next we'll work on finalizing the concepts and getting public feedback on those. That's the selecting the alternatives process that we showed in the previous timeline slide. And then develop that final report and bring the project to its conclusion in probably early 2019. We're thinking January 2019. Before we wrap up too, while this corridor study has been underway, we do want to acknowledge and draw some attention to a set of 8 pedestrian safety projects that Nevada DOT has already initiated along Boulder Highway. They're our partner in this study and have been active throughout the process. So these projects include a variety of safety countermeasures at some priority locations along the corridor. So, yep, with that final note, that concludes the update, and we're ready to respond to any questions you may have.
Comments or questions from the board? Mayor?
Just very briefly, thank you. I mean, this has been such a long time coming. It was the main highway for us all back in the 60s, so we know nothing's been done and so necessary. I know this is a ridiculous question, but I have 2 of them. The first one's not so ridiculous. Have you been able to prioritize on those segments, starting in the south, the southernmost, all the way up to Charleston or wherever the last segment? Have you prioritized this at all? That's one. And in this day and age today, a projection on what it costs for each segment, so at least we can get our arms around the magnitude of what we're going to have to bond and or raise.
Madam Chair, yeah, or Madam Mayor, through the chair, I think. Again, Craig Rayborn, RTC. So we're still developing the cost estimates. That will come later in the process, as well as an implementation plan that would address the prioritization. Those are the sort of the final pieces once we get the full buy-in on the concepts and what the stakeholders along the different pieces of the corridor prefer to have.
And therefore, Mr. Chairman, if I may continue, knowing what you've just responded, which makes sense, what NDOT is doing on those improvements on the last slide that we had, are those funded and in process?
Yes, that's funded, it's in process.
All of that?
Yeah,
Through
the eight
NDOT.
improvements that we showed on the last slide, this one, that's, yes.
With a timeline, do we have an estimate so that the public can know, it's going to start and it's going to hopefully be done by?
Rudy?
Those are under construction. That contract's been awarded a couple months ago, so I think that they're probably through mobilizing, and I could get you the timeline, but it should be probably within a year that they'll be completed.
Excellent, excellent, thank you.
Is it, to follow up on the mayor, is that one project contract for all of the,
Correct. That's one contract that's been awarded for those 8 intersections.
Commissioner?
Thank you for asking that. Yeah, it's very much needed. Sun Valley was completed, so that's not even on here as far as one of your ID'd areas, but, and that's in Commissioner Gibson's thing. So I think with your presentation, this then incorporates those, so they're not exclusive of each other, right? So we're not redoing something down the road. And I think that's very key for people to understand, that we're not putting something in and tearing it back out and then putting it back in again in a completely different way. It anticipated this. Portions of this is my district, portions are Gibson, so it's a marriage between the city of Las Vegas all the way up to Henderson as far as that's concerned. But it's always been, I travel that road on a daily basis, and it's always been a pedestrian issue for people. It's such a wide area to get across, and even though I have more apartments on there, more kids, I also have a lot of senior citizens, and we just opened Boulder Pines with the Boys and Girls Club and Matter Academy, and so you've got that piece going. So I hope as you continue and wrap up this by January that I think someone just bought the parcel, or they're in escrow, because we tried to get it, the old Showboat site, so that we make sure that they're aware as potential purchasers of what we're looking at, so we don't have, maybe they can contribute something to make sure that that design is moving forward in a better way. It won't be completed in my term, I end in 4 months, but I'm thrilled that we'll be actually moving forward, because it's been long, long overdue for the number of safety of deaths that we've had in that corridor. And I want to thank NDOT for working with us on that part of it as well. I told Larry, I said, it's been 10 or 12 years that we started this conversation. I'm patient, but I do hope that this gets done within my lifetime, whether I'm on the commission or not. So thank you, gentlemen. I'm excited about this, because it does change. My east side people all feel like they've always been neglected. It's like Nellis, Rudy, when you redo Nellis, get some jazz in there, get a little beautification instead of black asphalt on everything. There's got to be some compliment that comes in, that just because you're in a middle class area, or maybe even a little bit lower as an income area, that we can do things well, because the sense of pride that comes with that comes a long way. So I hope that that's something that we can always take into consideration. Thank you.
Thank you. Couple questions. Is this state highway or is this local?
Yes, it's state highway.
The scope area is all NDOT? Okay. And what, do we have ridership numbers on Boulder Highway route?
10,000.
Over 10,000? And is this anywhere on an FRI list?
Yes, actually, the next item will address the funding allocated for this project.
And your scope, did it include, it said it ended at Charleston? Does it address that wonderful 5-point area?
Yeah, right at the north, yeah, I think so, right? Yeah, we looked at Charleston, and we looked at,
The 4 corners?
yeah.
4, 5, 6? Good. Thank you, gentlemen.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Mr. Chairman, I just wanted to add that it looks like an absolutely excellent plan. I know the individuals who live there and use that means of travel there have felt neglected, and it looks neglected. And this is a beautiful plan which seems to encompass all needs. I noticed your bicycle paths were wider, and the aesthetics of it are excellent. So good luck in the money part.
Thank you.
Thank you, Jacob and Herschel. Moving on, item 49 is to receive a presentation from NDOT on the status of projects identified on the fuel revenue indexing list of projects. Mr. Chairman, the board at its July meeting requested that this item be brought this month. Since then, the RTC staff and the public works staff from the county and the cities have worked with NDOT on the list of projects and the revisions to the list. Also included in your backup is a list of non-FRI funded projects in the State Transportation Improvement Program. We will continue to work with the state as priorities change. Mr. Rudy Mafabon, NDOT's director, will give a brief presentation on this item.
Thank you, Fred. So this is going to be a series of tables that show the projects that we listed back in the middle of 2016 prior to the public vote that passed the fuel revenue indexing continuation here in Clark County. So you can imagine that we had some very tough estimating to do with not a lot of information back then. And we have a clearer picture now, and as what happens normally with the transportation plans, they can be fluid and they can be modified as we go through the implementation phases of these various projects. So I just wanted to give an overview of the several projects that were on that list and where we are currently. Fred had mentioned that the Boulder Highway Safety Improvements, we'd mentioned it during this presentation. So at the time, we don't have very definite cost estimates currently, but we estimated back in 2016 about $55 million. Currently, we're looking at a contribution of $40 million, and this is going to be something that we're going to have to just keep on discussing with other public agencies, and as we implement this Boulder Highway project, you can see that it's going to make some huge improvements to that corridor and transform it. We want to do our part, but we still want to discuss participation with others and possibly road transfers in the future with some of the entities, just like we're doing with the Beltway and Summerlin Parkway. The other NDOT contribution is unknown at this time. I-11 corridor, we've got the celebration that we attended recently for the opening of the portion to the south of Henderson, but we want to do an environmental clearance of where is I-11 going to go through the Las Vegas Valley, the urban area. So we anticipate a tiered approach on this, similar to what they're doing in Arizona, do a high-level environmental study and then a more deliberate and definite environmental study in a second stage. So that's why this is roughly half of the original estimate for that. And those traffic study numbers that we're currently feeding out for the 20-year projections will feed into this environmental study for I-11. We also have the Henderson system-to-system interchange with the Beltway and 515 I-11 junction there. Our initial estimates have gone up quite a bit, but we're working on that. Henderson has actually started out with feasibility study, which will feed into our environmental study for this interchange, and we'll get better numbers as we go along. But the contribution for FRI has stayed about the same, but the cost of the project, we'll have to commit other NDOT funds towards the project for completion. It'll probably be a phased approach. In the north, the 215 Centennial Bowl with, this is the I-15 North interchange in North Las Vegas. We originally estimated $150 million. We've advanced the engineering on this project, so we believe that it's a lot less with some of the engineering changes that we've done. This project is actually going to go out next year for bids, so it's a definite estimate at this stage from the engineers. And we don't, with the federal funds that were available, we feel that we don't need to use FRI in this project, but it's going to go out next year still. I-15 Tropicana interchange, we're studying this right now for environmental clearance and then eventually reconstruction. I had mentioned before that the environmental clearance is packaged with the Hacienda and Harmon HOV ramps on I-15, and the stadium developer and MGM Resorts had mentioned that the Hacienda location doesn't make as much sense for them since it's the primary pedestrian access anticipated during the events held at the stadium. So we're revising our HOV plan, but the Tropicana study itself, we're still fine-tuning the design for that interchange. It's gone up a little bit in cost, and we're estimating that increase under FRI. There's a bunch of packages of I-515, the expressway jobs downtown, and so it goes all the way to Russell Road, all the way from downtown Las Vegas. So there's many packages. This a lot more work to do. That's why you see unknowns on cost estimates. You see that a lot of the different packages had lower numbers, and now with the cost estimates recently, they're higher. So that explains that phase 6 at the very bottom, a seismic retrofit and deck rehab project. And one of the things we want to do on this phase 6, it's actually going to come out first, and you can see some of the scope of work transferred to those other later projects, the package 1 through 5. So that's why the cost estimate has gone down quite a bit in recently for that project. But we're also trying to, when you were taking 95 to go downtown, you had to go through a lane reduction underneath I-15 from 3 lanes to 2 lanes. We want to make that 3 lanes, as it is currently with Project Neon. It's a temporary situation for traffic control, but it was at the expense of one of the lanes that were coming on from the ramps from I-15 to go downtown Las Vegas. So we want to make that permanent under this project, and the Transportation Board did authorize us to have our engineering company, our consultant, to do that work to make that a real construction project. There's I-15 had environmental studies for various interchanges. Sloan Interchange was one of the ones on the southwest part of town that hasn't been done yet. Originally it was estimated about $50 million. It's gone up in price in the recent estimates, and the amount of FRI is still about the same, gone up about $4.5 million. But we'll get the money from other NDOT funding to do that. The Beltway widening, it's unknown at this time, but we know it's in that area that NDOT's going to take over. I know the county also is pursuing widening projects on the Beltway, on the southern portion of the Beltway. So we'll work with the county on those projects, but it remains to be seen as far as what the scope of work on some of these projects that are not as well developed for NDOT are. But we're willing to work with Clark County on that, the improvements, because I've driven that section of the Beltway. I know that it backs up a lot from Henderson all the way to just west of Decatur. So some work needs to be done, and we're willing to participate with the county on those. There's some improvements needed at Eastern Avenue, another one of those that's unknown, but we want to do our part. We just don't have the firm numbers yet, and more to come on improving the Eastern interchange at the Beltway. The US 95 215 interchange in the northwest, Centennial Bowl, the estimated FRI back in 2016 was $155 million. It's $142 million now. We're going to use $42 million of FRI and use other NDOT federal and state funds for the difference. And that one is, that's the project that's coming out in 2 years. So the Transportation Board awarded recently the current phase that will build the flyovers headed westbound, and this will take care of a lot of the improvements that are still needed on the east side of that interchange. We'll complete that system-to-system interchange improvement, it'll start in 2 years. There's a lot of projects that were still to be developed and unknown or on hold, and this kind of, a lot of them are related to HOV or frontage roads. One of them, the second from the bottom, the Boulder City Parkway, was already done by RTC with Boulder City, but it was originally added to NDOT's list by back in the day when NDOT's list was developed in 2016. The I-15 North Package 3 is a new project. It was not on our original 2016 list. We're estimating the cost about $82 million and estimating about $32 million from FRI. This is a project that would widen I-15. So we had the environmental clearance from the Speedway interchange to Apex. We all know that we just wrapped up the widening from Craig Road to the Speedway, and we were going to proceed with the next portion from Speedway to Apex, and we felt that we needed to widen from Apex to the US 93 Garnett interchange. So that's why the estimate's significant, but we also are issuing a request for proposals for the consultant engineering companies to respond to that would clear that additional portion from Apex to Garnett interchange and do some preliminary engineering on that stretch. So that project's going to be at least advancing forward through the environmental clearance and preliminary engineering phases. It's a new project that was added. Now, I apologize, I had a duplicate slide in the copies that were made for the commissioners here, but it was removed on this. So I wanted to get to the bottom line numbers. So the total NDOT contribution, if you look at the estimated FRI from that NDOT has and other NDOT contributions, that should be actually 615 million. It's missing some 3 zeros. I forgot to proofread this very well. But it is, if you added those two, if they made the correction 615 million and 571, it's nearly 1.2 billion that was originally estimated. We just have tempered the FRI contribution based on our availability of bonding, and we have different bonding policies than the other than the RTC had estimated. But we still want to deliver the projects, and we wanted to mention that there are several other projects that I haven't mentioned that are currently in the STIP. Some of these might be in the STIP, but might be accelerated. The idea is to add some of these newer FRI projects to the RTC's plan, and which gets adopted into the statewide plan eventually by the Transportation Board. But I wanted to just make a confirmation that NDOT is not looking at deferring any of the spending that we normally spend down here in Clark County in Southern Nevada, just because we got the additional FRI funding. We're not stealing any money from Southern Nevada, and we are making these commitments for these projects. There's still a lot of projects that are on hold or still to figure out, or there's a lot of unknowns on those lists that I gave. The other thing is that there's been concern about a project up in Reno, Spaghetti Bowl, and is that taking any money from Southern Nevada? No, it's not. It's actually based on bonding approval from the authority that will be granted by the legislature when they consider our budget request for the next biennium. So I wanted to make those commitments that we're not stealing any money or diverting any money from Southern Nevada for that Reno project or for any other projects in the state. And you can see the commitment from NDOT to these projects is that I've gone through. And sorry for the typo on the last slide, but willing to answer any questions.
Thank you, Rudy. Mayor?
Actually, this is for you, Mr. Chairman. Fry money, those vehicles that are not going to be using fuel. I think this committee or commission or somebody, some group somewhere to get to the legislature, and since you're the boss, I'm asking you to make sure that something is done in this legislature to have those non-fueled vehicles participate in Fry funding. Buses, trucks, cars, everything. And I don't know how to go about that and where it should be, but you've been in service a lot longer, even though you're younger. So you're charged with it, please.
Duly noted. We, I don't know if this was discussed in Carson City 2 years ago, but it certainly has been discussed with TRAC and some other issues. Do we have any update on that?
That's correct. In the last legislative session, there was a discussion to impose a fee on vehicle registration or a separate fee for like electric vehicles, but that didn't go through. So it's possible that will be pursued this session. But yes, duly noted, we'll make sure that we work with whoever we can to move that forward this session.
Excuse me, Mr. Chairman, really, it can't just be a discussion because this legislature, unlike other states, does not meet every year. And so these are funds that we desperately need to be able to do the Boulder Highway, everything that the Fries of today and the future, we need total participation by every vehicle.
Mr. Chairman,
Whatever.
I could add that NDOT's been asked to provide some information to the legislature. So they are considering, they're just in the information gathering right now phase and getting some information that we're getting from DMV and some other states that have enacted that type of legislation. So I assume that there's going to be a bill draft to that effect coming forward.
Mr. Chairman, can we get a report back then? Can we put that somewhere on the agenda, Fred? And yes.
Correct. And Angela has a comment as well.
Good morning, Angela Castro for the record. We will be bringing back a legislative update at the October board meeting, and we will also provide an update on conversations that have taken place. But there are very active conversations in and around electric vehicles, vehicle miles traveled, what are we going to do and address that in the community. And there, from what we're hearing, there may be potential legislation as well that has been drafted. So we're staying very close to those conversations and monitoring it, and I will bring you back a full report of our efforts at our next board meeting.
Commissioner.
Thank you. Along those lines, could we not request from one of the transportation committees a reserve of a BDR? We're all recommending ours actually next week, I think, from the county. Or maybe we explore through NACO and League of Cities having a BDR that actually addresses that, so that while they're doing their information gathering, it doesn't come back to, well, we didn't have a bill draft to have to actually act on. So let's look at a way to be proactive on that part of it. It's been looked at for 2 sessions at least, and it's probably time, well, no, it's more than time. And it's nothing against, we don't want to discourage people moving in that way, but they're still using the roadway, so there's still an impact on it. So there should be a contribution that's made that everybody else is paying as far as that's concerned. And then I had another comment. Rudy, I just found the other money needed for the $40 million for Boulder Highway on your FRI list here. The savings that was made on the $150 million down to the $93 million gives us plenty, and then we should be able to reallocate that. So I just throw that out there. Thanks.
And on the potential legislation, I know that RTC and the cities, the county, once the election cycle's over, chairmans are nominated or selected, we usually host some legislative gathering at the respectives, and maybe we keep this issue on all our member agencies' agenda as far as when we start meeting with legislators going into the new year. And Rudy, just one specific question on the I-15 215 interchange project. NDOT's going to take that interchange and bring it west to Range, is it my understanding? And I think the county's project from 5th ends at Range, Joe? Okay. So you'd be responsible from taking the Beltway from Range through the interchange?
It looked like there was some work on Range Road, and so you wouldn't have to stop at a stop sign when the NDOT project is completed. You'll have the bridges that fly over.
Good. Thank you. Any other comments or questions? Rudy, thank you for that presentation. We have come a long way in our relationship. It's a good thing. It's a good day, and appreciate the detailed information.
We listen to what the board says, down here. That's the whole purpose of the NDOT director sitting on this board. So
thank you.
All right. Item 50 is to receive a presentation on the progress of the Maryland Parkway environmental assessment and next steps. Mr. David Swallow, RTC's Director of Engineering and Technology, will provide the board with a brief update on the project.
Good morning, Mr. Chairman, members of the Commission. David Swallow, RTC. I just wanted to give you a quick update on the progress of the Maryland Parkway project, in particular related to the environmental assessment that has been underway for the past few years. I'm happy to report that it's in the final review by the Federal Transit Administration, preparing it for signature so that we can publish the document. I just want to highlight, for the benefit of everyone here, some background on the proposed project and the decisions that we'll be bringing forward to you. Today, Maryland Parkway, the transit route extends from our South Strip Transfer Terminal south of the airport, north along Maryland Parkway into downtown Las Vegas via Bonneville and Clark Avenues, over to and from our Bonneville Transit Center. With this proposed project, we're looking to extend the service from the Bonneville Transit Center in downtown, which you see noted on the map as the BTC, west to the Las Vegas Medical District. This would enable a one-seat type of ride between the UNLV's main campus on Maryland Parkway, as well as the Chatelaine campus located in the medical district where the new School of Medicine is to be located, along with connecting to 3 different hospitals, including Sunrise Hospital on Maryland Parkway, and then UMC and Valley Hospital in the medical district. And so with this, it's an approximate 8.7-mile route between the airport to and through downtown Las Vegas over to the medical district. We're considering 3 different approaches to upgrading the transit service. The first being enhanced bus, the second being bus rapid transit, and third, an urban light rail or modern streetcar type technology. We're also looking to really focus the stop locations at the key destinations along the corridor, actually reducing the number of stops, but helping to speed up the service. So stops still be close enough to access for everyone, but a little bit further apart, going from quarter mile to third of a mile spacing to help speed up the service. So the options being considered, we call it enhanced bus, or in this case, Route 109, which is our current bus route's name for Maryland Parkway, bus rapid transit, and urban light rail. So I'll just highlight for you what these represent. When we talk about enhanced bus, we're looking at, again, reducing the number of stops, spacing them a little bit further apart, similar to what we've done on other corridors, and we've seen success with that on Sahara Avenue, Flamingo Road, Boulder Highway, where we, counterintuitive, you think taking out stops you would reduce ridership. It actually increases ridership because the service is a little bit faster. We were looking to do the same thing on Maryland Parkway, also upgrading the passenger shelters. This is just a depiction of one that we used on Flamingo Road. We would look to do a similar upgrade with the enhanced bus option. The point with the enhanced bus is to really optimize as much as possible the current bus service that we have, but really with minimal capital investment going forward. The second option being considered is what we call bus rapid transit, and this is similar to what we've done on Boulder Highway, as well as Sahara Avenue. And you can see here we're proposing to reconstruct Maryland Parkway from the 6 general purpose traffic lanes that are there today to 4 general purpose traffic lanes, as well as 2 curbside running dedicated transit lanes. Now, these transit lanes are still available for motorists to use to make right turns, thereby preserving that traffic capacity that exists today. At major intersections, we may add right turn lanes to help keep the service going and maintain the capacity of the corridor. Another feature that I'd like to point out is pulling bicycles out of the roadway itself and creating separated bicycle lanes behind the curbs, adjacent to the sidewalk, same elevation as the sidewalk, so giving bicyclists an area that they perceive might be a little bit safer and more comfortable to ride on. This also helps create more of a buffer between where people are walking on the sidewalk and where cars and buses are traveling in the roadway. This would require slivers of right-of-way. The current right-of-way is about 100 feet nominally along the corridor. What's shown here would require somewhere around 104 to 106 feet, so literally just slivers along the corridor. Except where we have stops, at that point we'd have to do a little bit more of a larger envelope for our stop locations to help move the passenger shelters a little bit further away from the curb, helping our customers feel a little bit more comfortable while they're waiting. This also includes channelizing the median islands so that today Maryland Parkway has 2-way left turn lane almost the whole length of the corridor. Here we're trying to focus the left turns at the key access points. The third option being considered is what we call urban light rail, otherwise known as modern streetcar. This is a single unit light rail train, and you can see here, again, similar to the bus rapid transit concept, the dedicated transit lanes running along the curbs. These lanes, again, are available for cars to use to make right turns. We also are locating the bike lanes behind the curbs, adjacent to the sidewalks, and then having the sidewalk area with that buffer between where the roadway is and the bike lane. I also like to point out that we are showing the overhead catenary system. This is typical on modern streetcar systems today. I am happy to report that these systems are kind of moving out, and they're going to more of the limited sections of overhead or even battery-powered light rail trains. We've seen this in some other cities, such as Detroit, where I think about 40% of their streetcar line goes off-wire, where the overhead there's no overhead wire. We're watching this technology to see how it evolves. That may be considered in the future. This is another concept that shows what it would look like without the overhead. I do have to point out the overhead, though, for the environmental process, because that is the largest potential impact visually. But again, we're going to keep our eyes on the technology to see how it evolves. So these are the three options that we will be bringing to you for your consideration. When we look at these options, I think the most important part is hearing from the community what they would like to see on the corridor, and that's why we're going out. We've given a number of presentations to the local jurisdictions, including all the cities in the county. We've also gone to the RTC advisory committees, and then, of course, corridor stakeholder groups such as the Maryland Parkway Coalition, Downtown Las Vegas Alliance, and other groups. And we're continuing to foster those relationships to make sure that the community is engaged and we're able to help them understand what's being proposed and to get their candid feedback on these proposals. Going forward, we're looking to publish the environmental assessment for public review and comment. We anticipate this happening in October, and then being able to collect the comments, our responses to those comments, and bring a summary to you at a later board meeting, likely in November of this year, for your consideration as to which option to pursue going forward. Ultimately, we need what's called a locally preferred alternative to close out the environmental process, and that locally preferred alternative is one of the three selections that I presented to you. So with that, I'd be happy to answer any questions.
Thank you. Comments or questions? Commissioner?
Thank you. Thank you for the report. Last week, we heard it at BCC as well, or zoning, I guess it was. And an issue came up from some of the constituents with regard to affordable housing component along the corridor. So I'll make sure that when I put that work group together, that someone from RTC participates in that, because I want to anticipate the property values, but the opportunities that might be along that corridor for spearheading that. Do you know offhand what our ridership is at the UNLV stop?
I don't have that number right offhand, but I'm happy to bring that back
I'd be
to you.
just curious to see what the usage on that, because at one time when they did the study back when Michael Saltman was working on his project, Midtown, we found that like 48% were actually driving through and not even going to the university. And so I'm just curious if there's been a usage increase on that part. Are you incorporating the NEA art grant that we got several years ago, their policy, or let's not forget that that was done as far as recommendations for beautifying and doing public art along that corridor as well? We've been working with NV Energy to remove 3 light poles in Kazat over by the university. And so I want to maintain the status of that, because some of those old wooden poles impact an ADA component, and I think we finally got them to agree at least to move those 3 out so that we can actually widen the sidewalk for capacity, but there may be some other opportunities. And then I think, I like the idea of more of the urban light rail, but I think you're right. I think we need to plan for the technology possibly changing so we don't have to worry about putting in lines and fixed tracks, which gives you more flexibility on where the route goes in the long run. And I think the committee that Mr. Snyder chaired, surprisingly to me, made the recommendation for the full light rail cost, which was the $750 projection versus the $350 projection on the urban light rails. That's still kind of in the ballpark.
It was $750 for the urban light rail, and it was $335 for the bus rapid transit option.
Okay, I mixed up my numbers. Thank you. So the EIS, though, is not dependent. You have to anticipate what technology exists now for the EIS. It will be less impactful if the technology changes and you don't have to worry about wire, correct? Is that the way that they look at it?
That's correct.
Okay.
Yeah, we're anticipating overhead wire as part of the environmental assessment, but not, that doesn't mean we have to use it by any means.
And then this is still the anticipation of connecting from the airport to the medical center, to Bonneville, to the medical center, to North Las Vegas then, or to the medical center still.
To Las Vegas Medical District and to the airport. I'd like to point out that we've worked closely with the Department of Aviation. We do know that they have a study underway looking at their own on-site transportation and how best to bring in off-site transportation. So we're not reflecting the actual connection to the airport in the environmental document, because we want to see ultimately what their plans are and then incorporate those at a later date through an administrative change.
And Rosemary and I have spoken, because when they designed, or it wasn't her, but they designed it, you have to go all the way around in this huge loop instead of being able to access directly either off of Maryland or Eastern even. So when we did the park on the corner, the Siegfried and Roy, I had worked with Mary Beth Scott to make sure that we didn't do anything impactful in that corner in case we needed a landing spot, so you didn't have to spend money again to move something out of the way. So they just did minimal desert landscape. I don't think the art piece would be impacted. So just trying to anticipate what they might come up with, because it could be as simple as a pedestrian connection that you drop down and hop on it from there versus tearing up, the roadway or something along those lines. So I'd be
Yeah, and
curious.
that reflects what we had in the alternatives analysis
Okay,
originally.
thank you, Mr. Chair.
Yes, thank you. A few weeks back, we had a very comprehensive report from the track committee on all these options. Is that available in some kind of digital format that you could provide out to at least myself or the rest of the
Sure.
commission? Because they covered all the different areas and all those technologies and everything else. I think it was very, very informative. Or even make it available on the website for the.
Sure, we do have all our track agenda backup materials on our website. So
But there was a very good PowerPoint and very good presentation on the options and the pros and cons, and so.
Will do.
Thank you.
Thanks, David. Item 51 is to receive information from legal counsel. Mr. Chairman, nothing to report at this time.
Legal, do you concur?
You bet.
I vehemently concur, Mr. Chairman.
Just wanted to make sure you were with us.
Item 52 is your final citizens' participation.
It's the second time set aside for public comment. Those wishing to speak to the board? Robin? Yes.
Oh, is it on then? Okay. Good morning. Just want to make sure I press the button. Good morning. My name is Robin Kincaid, and I have shared with the board in the past how the service area restrictions have impacted my daughter, Kayla Kincaid, her access to church, friends, and potential employment opportunities. Once again, I stand before you to pose some questions, and I'm requesting answers from the commission. It's very evident that there really is not a process to expand either the fixed route or even the paratransit service area. I know that last month I talked about in public comment that maybe we even consider a premium priced area to cover the gaps in the fingers that are not in the service area, so at least there'd be some type of service for persons with disabilities to access, essential or even needed services. Again, I'm going to ask, and I know that even though I ask, it doesn't happen, but I'd like to ask that it be on the agenda, that we could have some more conversations about some solutions to this problem. Okay, and so also the problem is that there are locations where literally there are houses across the street that have service and 100 feet away they don't have service, and so it's just a real equity issue. I also have some concerns about the commission not being fully informed about the FTA audit. I've talked about the audit like several different meetings, and I'm still concerned that this commission hasn't really had a chance to see what the findings were, and certainly just like an update. So I'm again requesting that some kind of an update be put on the October agenda, and so that we can have some transparency in these concerns and these questions. And I know that the RTC is working, and they're also working with the FDA to work on this audit and respond back, but we feel as though that the commission should be informed. It shouldn't be someone like myself from the public coming in and telling you there's an audit. And I'm just very concerned that there is a breakdown in communication in this area. I also just wanted to briefly tell you of my daughter's experience yesterday with a ride that she has. She attends UNLV, and so she was going from UNLV bus stop number 2 to home, and so her ride was scheduled to be at 2:35 to 3:05. That was the window. and she arrived at the bus stop at 2:30 and patiently waited for the driver. At 3:32, an hour later, I called and asked for a status from RTC, and they were kind enough to check in with the driver and let me know that they were running a little late. And my response to that is that's just not a little late. She's been waiting an hour. And so she was picked up another 20 minutes later. So she waited an hour and 20 minutes in 99-degree heat. And I just find that to be somewhat unacceptable. I understand that these things do happen. I don't agree that they were a little late. And so that's something that concerns me a little bit, is that that's not really a very accurate reflection of what occurred. And so these types of experiences, they occur way too often for people with disabilities. I also encourage you to maybe ask some questions and work toward a solution to eliminate these extended wait times. So in conclusion, once again, I'm asking for the audit and the request to expand the service area to be placed on the October agenda. It does sound like that there is a possibility that that peer review study may be possibly on the agenda, so we're really looking forward to that. I think as a member of the public, we've been very patient. We tried to communicate with you and talk with you about some of these concerns, and certainly do appreciate if we can find ways to meet the needs of this growing population that includes citizens that may not have access to essential services. Thank you for your time.
Thank you, Raman. Stephanie?
Good morning, Commissioners. My name is Stephanie Versnick, and I'm speaking before you for the 10th time. Each time I've testified, my message has been the same. Restore the service area the way it was back in 2011. Everyone on this commission is familiar with my situation. I have shared my story several times over the last 10 months. I have a couple questions. What is the purpose of having a citizen's participation? How does testifying each month change things? What do I need to do to get services for my son? Isn't your job to listen to the public, to listen to the needs of this community? Each month I attend these meetings, and the discussions are about our tourists. I would like to see more of a focus on the needs of this community. I am amazed how this service continues to not meet the needs of this community, and that the only option for people with and this is the only option that people with disabilities have. The Americans with Disabilities Act was designed to protect the rights of people with disabilities. Access to transportation. For many years, we were a leader in going above and beyond in providing services. Now we've turned into a community who doesn't view people with disabilities as a priority. I understand next month the peer review study will be presented. I find it hard to believe that the study won't show how great the need is in this community. Our city is consistently growing. Maybe after you have paid an exorbitant amount of money to review this study, you will understand what we're talking about. What we've been saying all along, expand the service area. In closing, as I previously stated, a community that excludes even one of their members is excluding a whole community. You're excluding a whole population. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Havender, Mr. Davis. Help with that mic, please.
I'll move over. Good morning. How are you guys this morning? I just want to express that we are still asking for you guys to put considerable thought into expanding the service area, and that maybe to talk to some of your different committees and see what their views on the issue is. I know that the Transportation Access Advisory Committee is a committee that advises you guys on things for people with disabilities. Maybe we should bring it to them and ask them what do they think about expanding the service area. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Nancy Vanucci?
Yes, I'm moving in with my son on Saturday for health reasons. The doctors don't want me living alone for a while until I heal better, plus I have MS. Where my son lives, RTC services, but they will not service me there because I have not lived there over 10 years. My daughter-in-law has, and my son has for 6 years. And with a power wheelchair through rain or dust with me, when they put in the PIC lines, the wind there by Lone Mountain is horrendous. And I fight bacteria infections very seriously. And making that drive to be picked up and waiting a half an hour to 45 minutes for the bus to come late is a difficult task for me. So I want to be picked up in the Lone Mountain Estates where they do service. I don't see the reason why I should be punished because I'm sick. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Can we have staff talk to Nancy after?
Could I ask, Mr. Chairman, is there a rule that you have to live someplace 10 years? That sounds ridiculous. Can anybody tell me? Well,
We're going to look into that. So after this meeting, we'll work with...
excuse me, I couldn't hear you.
We're going to look into that as stated right after this meeting.
Okay, thank you. He's going to look into it.
Mr. Christoph.
Good morning. I give you this flyer for all your staff. I've been on this for 2 weeks with Homeland Security in state of Nevada and back east. This is serious. Stardust Hotel, all the way down on the west side, wide open. The space between the main street and the curb is that high, is approximately 31 feet to 40 feet wide, where they go around the circus back out in front of the Stardust. We noticed this about 3 weeks ago. We called several people related to this. And to me, it's very disturbing because it's been like that for the past 3 years. As we this week talk about what happened in 9/11, as well as we had at the Mandalay Bay, we have a lot of concerns that people don't realize. I represent the third largest tour company. I do not want my people to stop coming here so they can enjoy them. Now, enough is enough about money. Lives are important, and the way you talk about money, this should have been corrected 5 years ago. 5 years ago, but the county, as well as other people, did not take notice on what was going on the west side. Sure, they have entertainment on the west side, and they closed it. That's what the, what do you call it, the other casino. But we see a lot of problems. Even my staff saying it is so dangerous on not just the Las Vegas Boulevard, but all over this town. We know Metro is quadruple their out there, but you cannot stop it. We're overcrowded with vehicles. Some of them have 2 or 3 vehicles in their garage. Traffic is zero. You have to get up at 5 o'clock to go to work at 8 o'clock, 9 o'clock now. Intersections at Boulder Highway as we talk. The most jammed up problem that's ever happened. People coming out from the main county workshop have to be backed up for 2 hours. They're getting paid, sure, by the hour, but we're not solving our county problems. And to me, if we don't take heed to this warning, we don't want to broadcast this that you can get killed. Just drive right on that west side and killed like they did in Paris. Then we're not doing our duty. And to me, I take it very seriously. I've been here a long time. Sure, I'm in and out. But when it comes to our tour companies, and knowing that their people are not being protected in any part of that strip, then we have a situation where we're going to go national news that this town is so dangerous that they ignore it. It's all about money, dope, and corruption, and their image. So I just give you this thought. You know that, Mr. Larry Brown, very well. Money is to bring people here, but money is to make sure it's safe. And our town is wide open. We have something that very important came in. These bus shelters, they're using them, the homeless, to sleep in them, in the back and everything. We have 140 of those pictures taken, and they jumped up and said, well, we have to sleep somewhere. Those bus shelters have become the homeless place to sleep. So let you know, we took pictures of it. We're not here to run around and take pictures, but we see that this is going on, and our own officials see what's going on, and they don't even consider it. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Is there anyone else wishing to speak to the board?
Did you get your flyer? Did you get your notice? It is genuine. We're getting hundreds of calls on these documents that place is wide open. And all the other good casinos.
Thank you, Chris. We have another speaker.
Put the ballers up. As I spoke to Steve Sidlak, I said, what's going on? Well, the casinos took care of it. What about us, the public, and the people
Chris.
who are paying for all these things?
Chris.
We're not taking care of it.
Thank you.
Good morning. Good morning, board. My name is John Mildonisha E., last name Foster, President Business Agent of Amalgamated Transit Union, ATU, Local 1637, where I represent the drivers at the Keolis Yard as well as MV Transportation. My concern to the board is that the drivers are under attack. We have a nationwide campaign going on about driver safety while in the seat. We know in Las Vegas, drivers have been assaulted, some have been injured, and we feel that there's no protection on the local level or the state level for drivers. I have a couple brochures for the board to let you know what's going on nationwide with driver assaults throughout the country. And we need your help, as well as the company's help when drivers are being assaulted. Drivers are being terminated for protecting themselves. That's the only protection they have in the seat. You can't allow yourself to be assaulted and be terminated at the same time. So it's an issue. My main concern is driver safety. When you come to work, you expect to go home the same way. Driving the bus used to be a prestige job. It has gotten dangerous over the years. We have the signs in the buses saying it's a felony or a misdemeanor if you assault a driver. No convictions have been made. Nobody does anything about it. It's always a deaf ear turn to the situation. Then the operators are the ones that end up being punished for being assaulted, for protecting themselves. Then another issue we have, we have a good working relationship with Keolis Transit. When contract negotiations with MV, it's at a stalemate over at MV right now. We have to do something to bring morale back to MV Transportation. We have operators that don't want to come to work, don't want to drive, because the morale is just low, where management doesn't seem to care about the operators. I'm not here to bash MV, I'm not here to bash Keolis. I just need the board to know what's going on with the companies that y'all subcontracted out to. So if you can help us with the driver safety, that our operators are protected, by Metropolitan Police or whoever, law enforcement agency, that if they're assaulted, the criminals called it caught, that they will pursue the charges on behalf of the operators. Thank you.
Thank you for your comments. Anyone else wishing to speak to the board? Councilman.
Can we get a report from staff on assaults or incidences so we can give a scope of what may be happening?
Sure.
Maybe put that in the GM's report next month.
If they do that, Mr. Chair, I think because of problems that we'd had in the past, we did add cameras and security. So if you could let us know or remind the board just wholly what we put into place based on what had happened in the past. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you. Seeing and hearing no one, thank you all. This meeting is adjourned. If the board could submit their confidential evaluation